You're watching Floyd Steinberg's YouTube channel. A happy new year to you. This is the picoTracker 2. And today let's talk about all the new and exciting features of this. So if you were looking for a small sequencer and sample player in tracker format for around $70, you might find this video interesting. Here we go. Since my video 1 year ago, the picoTracker team hasn't been idle. They founded a company which now is selling the PCBs for $50. You'll need to add a screen, some cherry keys, a battery and the 3D printed enclosure yourself, which will add an extra $25 to the grand total. In version 2, the team reacted to user feedback, so now there's a mechanical connector for the LCD, as soldering the ribbon cable to the PCB directly proved to be quite difficult in version 1. In fact, the only soldering to do in version 2 is for connecting the keyboard switches. Every other connection, including the battery, is now mechanical. The enclosure has gotten an overhaul as well. It's looking much more sleek now, with its printed bezel and transparent power switch, as you can see with these two devices side by side here. There's a charging LED inside the power switch now, which is pretty neat. The new firmware too, which at time of filming still is in beta status and a bit unstable, comes with a lot of new features complementing the new hardware. There are two software synthesizers to choose from now, besides the sampler, and it's now possible to set the volume on the audio out for headphones or line-out devices. USB MIDI is now available besides TRS MIDI, and some new commands to control the software synth sounds have been added as well. The screen can now be mirrored to a web browser over USB, which is a great feature for YouTubers. Last but not least, the project has a proper web page now, with a proper online manual for both assembling and using the picoTracker. Okay, before we start, grab the latest firmware and install it. Best thing here is you can install this on your existing picoTracker as well, getting all the new features. Connect the tracker to your computer by USB, then push a needle through that tiny hole on the bottom of the enclosure while switching it on. Then copy the firmware to the USB drive that shows up on your computer, and that's it. In the future, you can use the Update Firmware menu in the System Settings. Now prepare an SD card with a folder named Samples on it and copy some samples in WAV format to that folder. picoTracker can use up to 16 MB of samples in one project. Insert the card into the tracker and turn it on. picoTracker will boot straight to the song screen of the song you last worked on. Okay, so here we are, the new picoTracker. I'm just going to quickly walk through all the new features and create a short track in the process. Yeah, let's briefly get into the user interface here. There are several cherry keys here. These are arrow keys and these are function keys. This is play and stop. We'll use these in the process and you'll see what they do. On this screen, you can see there's a map of the screens down here in the left bottom corner. You can navigate this by holding down this function key here and then pressing the arrow keys. So for example, we're at the song screen and I can press up and move to the project screen or the setup screen or device screen. Here you can see one of the new functions that you already see in this area here. We can now export the screen output with the browser interface. You can set up MIDI and you can also set up all the colors now. By default, these colors are a little bit muted, so I changed them to be a little bit brighter here. Let's return to the song screen. A song is made up from chains, and chains are made up from patterns. And on the song screen you can see we've got these 8 columns here where you can place your chains on. They are played back in order. We begin by creating a first chain. Just press enter here and then you can see there's a 0, 0 right now. Hold the function key and now you can move to the chain screen. Here you can arrange your patterns in a certain order. Create a new chain by pressing this key once again. Then we move to the next screen by holding down the function button here and pressing right arrow. Here we're on the phrase screen. The phrase is a pattern made up from 16 steps. We'll just place one note here to begin with. So press enter once again. This reads C3 instrument 0. This screen is divided into 3 columns. In the first column you will find the notes. You can enter the notes here. We will also see the instrument number the notes is playing on. We've got 2 more columns for adding things like velocity or filter cutoff frequency or other commands, which we'll take a look at later maybe. Now I've entered my first note here. If you press play, you won't hear anything. That's because we still haven't loaded any samples or instruments into memory. So that's what we'll do next. Hold down the function key and press right arrow once again, and we're on the instrument screen. What you can do here is, load another instrument. So hold down the enter key, then press right once again. The first instrument you can use is a sampler. Let's start by creating a beat. Go down one line here and then press enter twice to go to the sample selection screen. This is the samples directory I showed you previously. We're going to load a bass drum here. In order to load instruments, hold down this key here and then press play. You can also preview instruments by pressing play while you place the cursor on one entry here. For example, we've got this bass drum, hi-hat, snare drum. Let's load these basic building blocks into memory. And then you can go back by holding down this key and pressing left again. So now we're back here. Let's select the bass drum sample by holding down the enter key and then scrolling through the entries here. We're going to just lay down a 4 to the floor beat here. Move the cursor down a bit and press enter. We will have this result if you press play now. Let's stop this and create another instrument. This is fairly simple. Just enter a new note here. And now what you want to do is to go into this column and hold down enter and arrow right. And then you will increment this to instrument 1. You can see we have no instrument on instrument 1. So let's go to the instrument screen once again. Press enter and arrow right. Then we can create a new instrument. Let's choose the hi-hat sample here. Let's go back to the phrase screen. Now we can place the hi-hat in between. Now let's listen to this. You can delete notes and other entries by pushing these buttons here simultaneously. Okay, so far so good. That's a drum groove done. Now let's go back to the song screen, hold down the function key and then navigate left 2 times. And now we're going to use this column here for another chain. Hold down enter and then press right to increment this to 1. Then go to the chain screen, press enter once again, and once again let's create a new chain here because chain 0 is already holding our drum groove. And then go to the pattern screen. Let's enter another note here. And now let's take a look at one of the exciting new features. Let's create another instrument here. Go to the instrument screen and then we're going to choose one of the new synthesizer plugins. So here's the SID emulator. If you don't know, SID is the sound chip found in the 80s Commodore 64 8-bit home computer. Sounds very characteristic and analog, and there's an emulation of this built into this. So let's listen to this. As this software still is in development, we might experience bugs here, but they are soon going to be ironed out. Let's change the waveform first. Let's go for saw wave. It's possible to change oscillator sync and ring modulation and the ADSR and filters, but at the moment this will most likely cause some errors, so we'll just keep our saw wave here. Let's go back to the track screen and just enter some notes here. We can adjust note values by pressing up and down or left and right. Pressing up while holding the Enter key will transpose the note by 1 octave up or down. Transpose by semi-notes by holding down Enter and pressing right. Now let's use a table to make this a little bit more chiptuney. Go into this column and now we're going to hold Enter and use a table on this. So tables are macro commands, so to speak, and you can assign them to certain notes and then the tables will start playing and executing commands you entered into these tables. To edit a table, we've got the table screen down there. Hold function and press arrow down. Let's start by adding an arpeggiator because the SID chip only has 3 voices, so in order to get the most out of it, composers in the 80s used very fast arpeggiators to play chords with only 1 voice. So that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, in this arpeggiator, I'm going to use the root note, which is the 0, and then I'm playing the 7th and the 5th, and 1 octave higher, which is C, or 12 seminotes in hexadecimal notation. So let's go to C here. And now we can listen to this. That's distorted, so let's transpose the note number here by 2 octaves and listen again. Right. One more thing I'd like to do is to add a filter envelope generator, so this note fades away like it has a decay and release phase. Here it is, and the values I'm going to use here for the cutoff speed are 7 and 1. Let's listen again. Let's add some more notes here. And let's add the table command here, and here, and here. To make this rhythmically more interesting, let's add the note here instead of the start. Here it is. Now I'm also going to add some volume commands here to add a little bit more motion into this sequence. Here we'll use 30 again, and here we'll use 50. Okay, let's listen. Right, and if you go back to the song screen now, you can play both tracks we created so far simultaneously. Right, next thing I want to do is to add another phrase to my chain screen here. So we play 2 chords, one after the other. So press enter here. You can see I've already added one here. This is a pattern I created previously and it's using a second table. Let's take a look at that. And in this arpeggiator table, I've just transposed the 3rd note down 1 semitone. So when we listen to all of this now, we have this sequence. By the way, in order to navigate the tables, you have to hold down this key and use the arrow keys to move left and right, so you can switch between the tables that are there. And there are up to 32 tables you can use here. Right. Okay, we've used 2 of the 8 tracks available now, and let's add a bass track now. So go to the 3rd column on the song screen, press enter once, press enter twice to go to the next free slot. Go to the chain screen, press enter twice, and let's just insert some notes here on the phrase screen. So here and here. Okay. Now we want to change the instrument number to the next free slot, and here as well. So this is instrument 4 now, you can see it here. And here's the new FM synthesizers. Hold down enter, press key right, and now let's go to OPAL. So this is a 2-operator FM synthesizer. We can choose an algorithm here. here. FM or additive, we're going to use FM. Additive is this one. In the next line, you can set up tremolo and vibrato. The option is to have either a strong tremolo or vibrato or a very subtle one. We are not about subtlety here, so let's turn this on. Feedback is operator feedback on operator 1. We won't use this here. And level is the loudness or the strength of the operators. In this setup, operator 1 is the modulator to operator 2, which is the carrier. And the one thing you have to take notice of here is that this is an attenuator, not an amplifier. So the higher the number here, the less strong or the less loud the operator is. Let's just listen to this playing back. And you can see the lower I go with my numbers here, the louder the volume gets. Multiplier is the frequency multiplier. This will tune your operators 1 octave up or down. I'm trying to create a bass sound here. Next line, ADSR envelopes, this the amp envelope. The higher the number, the faster the attack, and the lower the number, the slower the attack or sustain or release. Let's set this up. A modulator with a fairly fast attack and a slow release. Let's also set up the carrier. In this line you can add extra power to the envelopes, tremolo and vibrato and so on. So let's take advantage of this and have a strong tremolo and vibrato for the modulator. Let's use a strong envelope and key scaling rate on the carrier as well. Okay, last thing I want to do is to reduce the overall key scale for the modulator to 0. So there we have it. This is my bass sound. In order to make it the bass, we're going to tune down the notes on the phrase screen. Like this. Let's add another phrase to our chain. So this is phrase 4. And let's play some E's here. And the result of all this is this sequence. We can add another sequence. I think I never made that cheerful music on this channel before. Okay, let's add a lead sound using the MIDI function. I'm going to use a quite cheap synthesizer for that. Okay, as you can see, I've added a small synthesizer here to my setup. The TRS MIDI out cable is going into the MIDI in on the back of this keyboard, and yeah, audio out of both synthesizers are going into my Zoom recorder you've seen previously in this video. I've added a 4th track here on the song screen. Let's take a look at that. So here it is. This chain is made up from 4 phrases. So it's playing a melody here, and the instrument I'm using is called Tacky Square. So I can go here to the performance screen. You can see it's the only instrument at the moment. What I did here is I created a new instrument on the picoTracker. You can see here this is a MIDI instrument using channel 1 at full volume. The length is unlimited, there's no automation, and I'm using no table here whatsoever. And I've just entered some notes here. I could make this a little bit more complicated by adding MIDI commands here. You can press enter here anytime and then access a whole lot of MIDI commands. For example, MIDI program change, MIDI CC, panning and fine tuning and other stuff, but I won't use that. Let's just go back to the song screen and listen to this. And now we can use the synthesizer's controls to change that sound a bit. Enough of this. Conclusion. There's not really a lot to complain about the new picoTracker, especially given its low price of $50 for the PCB set or roughly $75 if you don't own any of the components needed to finish building this thing. What I like most is that the developers will allow you to install the new firmware on the older hardware without any compromises. Having 8 tracks for samples or synth plugins is really great, and being able to use them for controlling external MIDI synthesizers is even greater. The only thing I need you to be aware of is that firmware version 2 still is in beta status, so things might be unstable. While filming this video, I had this crash multiple times with a variety of errors, for example, the system freezing completely or synthesizers not really reacting to the notes and commands I entered into the colons. But then again, the developers react super fast on bug reports, often releasing a firmware the next day. So at the given price, there's really not much alternatives to the picoTracker. You could use a games console like the RG35XX from Embanic, and then there's of course the DirtAway M8. But both of these devices are substantially more expensive than the picoTracker is. And that's it for today. picoTracker 2, lots of new features, same price. So if you think this was a good YouTube video, please do the YouTube thing. As always, thanks for watching and see you again very soon. Bye bye.